Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're in Masechtas Yevamot, daf Samach Ches. We're going to begin on Samach Zayin Mid Beis by the Mishnah. The Mishnah tells us Ha'uber v'Yavam. So when it comes to a woman who is pregnant, or a Yavam, or v'Ha'erusin, when it comes to a woman who's only had kedushin, v'Cheresh, and a situation of a deaf mute, uven teisha shana v'yom echad. And if you have a man who is 9 years old, poislin v'loy machilin. All of these situations, the din is, it will passel the person from being able to eat truma, but v'loy machilin. It's not going to allow a person to be able to eat truma. And the Gemara is going to explain all of these cases. Says Rashi, ha'uber poisel, bas kain sheniseis li'Yisrael, and the Mishnah already explains on Rashi that if you have a bas kohen who marries a Yisrael, so she was able to eat truma in her father's house, and now all of a sudden umes, and her husband dies, vehenichumu beres, and she's pregnant. Now she's pregnant, and her husband was a Yisrael. Now normally we would say she could go back to her father's house. Vehenu Michael bas Yisrael shenisis l'kayin. So the Uber will poisel her from eating truma. What does that mean? That since she's pregnant, she's not able to, even though she's going back to her father's house as a Kohen, she can't eat truma. So when it comes to a bas Kohen who marries a Kohen, and then the Kohen dies, she has no other kids, and she's pregnant, so the din is she cannot eat truma until that child is born. Safik shu ben tes shanim v'yom echad. Safik she'enu safik hevu beis saros. With Savik Shohevi, fine. So what happens? So let's just see all these Rashis. Vayavam is a bas kayin shemeres liyavam. So you have this bas kayin who is a shemeres yavam, and he was a Yisrael. So pasel metrumas aviha, even though she's a bas kayin, since she's zokuk to the bas to the Yisrael, so she can't eat truma. Bas Yisrael shemeres yavam kayin in a machila. A shemeres yavam, even though the brother is a kohen, she cannot eat until she actually is married. Ve'erusin bas kayin merasas Yisrael pasel. So if you have a bas kayin who is engaged already to Israel, that already she can no longer eat truma. And a bas Yisrael merasas a kayin in a machila. However, a bas Yisrael who marries a kohen is engaged to him only, so at that stage, she still is not able to eat. We'll see why not. There's actually two reasons, but the Gemara is only going to give one. Uben teisha shanim. So he says, if you have a child who's 9 years old, and the Gemara is going to explain that. So now the Rashi explains, Savik shu ben tes, savik she'enoi, havinami keben tes, upaisel, va'alimta de le'el koi, va'amilsa de le'el koi. This is going on all these cases above, that if we're not sure if this person is 9 years old or not, so we say hevi beis syros. Savik shehevi shtei syros. So Savi brought 2 hairs. Elkoi Indian Harrison. Deitani poislin. If let's say she's married to this guy and it's a suffix, whether he's actually 9. V'achi kamer katan shekide sheisha. You have a child who's Makadish a woman, Safik Hevi Shtei Cyrus. We don't even know if he brought Shtei Cyrus, the Kedusha of Kedushin, so we don't know if its Kedushin is valid. So it's a Safik Shlo Hevi, so the whole thing is a doubt. So Paisel Bas Kayin Hamaresa Slo Minatruma. We're going to passel the Bas Kayin from being able to eat Truma. Nafal Bias Allah V'al Bas Achiv. So this we had already in Daf Lamed Aleph. So you have a house, and it fell on 2 people. It fell on him and also his brother's bas achiv, your brother's daughter. Then you do ezim meis rishon. You don't know who died first. So tzarasa chaletzes lo misyabenas. Since we don't know if in fact there is this zika, so therefore the co-wife we do chalitza. Says Rashi, she ishto. So bas achiv, your brother's daughter, she ishto, who is your wife. Safik hu meis tchila, maybe he died first. V'naflu shtein lifnei achiv, and therefore both of them fell to the brother. Upoteres sarasa, and therefore, since she was an Ereva, so she patters the Tzara, Mishum Tzaras Abbas. Savik Bas Achiv Mesa, Rishayna, Rishas Nefila, Yavam, Lo Havit Tzaras Tzaras Ereva. That Nan, V'Kulin Imesu, as we saw in the beginning of this Masechta, that if there's co-wives and the Ereva died, then the Tzara is not going to be pater anymore. So saying Mutaros, that it'll be mutter to the Tzara. So therefore, because of that, we do Chalitza. Because again, it's a Sophic, so we go L'chumra. So now the Gemara is going to basically explain what we saw already in Rashi. Ha'uber. So Ibas Kayin L'Yisrael, let's say she's a daughter of a Kohen, which normally she'd be able to continue eating Truma, and she marries a Kohen to Yisrael, so at that point, she's not allowed to eat Truma. Now let's say her husband died. The reality is that she normally would go back to her father. But Pasala, the fact that she's pregnant will Pasal her Kinureha Prat Muberes. It's only when she goes back in the same way, same physical status. But since she's pregnant with this Yisrael, that will Pasal her from being able to eat Truma. Bas Yisrael Kohen he, if let's say she's a Bas Yisrael and she's married to a Kohen, she's also not allowed to eat because she's not a Kohen. She was only able to eat because she was married to a Kohen. The Kohen dies, she can't eat Truma unless she has children. Pregnancy doesn't help. Yolid Michael, Shen Yolid Enu Michael. Only a born child entitles her to be able to eat Truma. Hayavam, Ibas Kohen Yisrael he. Let's say again, it's a Bas Kohen, and she is Zokuk, the brother is a non-Kohen. So Pasala. So she'll become Pasala at that moment to eat Truma, even though really her father is a Kohen, because V'shava el Beisavia. Only time she can eat Truma if she's a Bas Kohen is she goes back to her father's house. Problem with Shemeres Yavam. A Shemeres Yavam is not going back to her father's house. She's waiting to do Yibum. Ibas Yisrael Kohen he loy Ma'ichala. And if let's say she's a Bas Yisrael and she's going to do Yibum with a Kohen, so you can say, well, so she should be able to eat Truma. No. Well, Ma'ichala Kinyan Kasma V'ha Kinyan De'achivhu. Only when it's a Kinyan Kaspa that Midaraisa Kedushin she should be able to eat Truma. We're going to see that there's a Gezerah why she's not allowed to, but Midaraisa she could. That's only when it comes to a Kinyan Kaspa. Lafuke when it comes to Shemer Shavam, in which is a Kinyan Achiv. The whole Kinyan was based on the original relationship that she had with your brother. The Erusin, so when it comes to engaged, so Ibas Kedushin, so Ibas Kohen L'Yisrael he Pasala. So if she's a Bas Kohen, and she decides she wants to marry a non-Kohen, so as soon as that Kedushin is done, that's it. She can no longer eat Truma. Pasala, as we continue in Samach Chesed Aleph, because the Kanya B'Havoya. There was a Kinyan, says Rashi, Meshas Havoya Afsila, that the time in which she does Kedushin with this non-Kohen, so all of a sudden she can't eat Truma anymore. V'bas Yisrael Kohen he loymachal mishum de'ula. However, if let's say she's the daughter of Yisrael, and she gets engaged to a Kohen, so why shouldn't she be able to eat? L'chayr mid'oraisa we just saw before she can. The answer is because of a takana of Ula. Says Rashi, according to the Gemara Masechtas Ksuvas, it says that Davar Torah Arusa Bas Yisrael Chelos B'Truma Dechsev Kinyan Kasbahu, as we saw. So Matam Amar Eno Echelos. So why can't she? So we saw this also before. The problem is that she's not living with this Kohen. So if the Kohen gives his fiancée Truma, she's going to go back home, and all of her brothers and sisters live there, and they're all non-Kohanim, and even though she may be allowed to eat the Truma, no one else is, and therefore because of that we don't want to avoid that issue. So what's the issue with a cheresh? So Ibas Kohen L'Yisrael. Let's say she's a Bas Kohen and she's marrying a Yisrael. So and he's a cheresh. So he pasal. Even though he's a Kohen, he will pasal her from being able to eat Truma, because the Bas Kohen L'Yisrael. This non-Kohen the Kanya but the Kanta the Rabbanan. Because the fact that they're married, even though maybe Midaraisa it's not a marriage, but it's a Midarabanan, they are considered to be married. The Chachamim say that a Cheresh has the ability, even though he's a Labas Das, Bar Dasu, nonetheless the Rabbanan said that the Kedushin is Kedushin and the Sun is in the Sun. So therefore, she's now midrabanan, halachically married to this cheresh, who is a Yisrael. That's why she can't eat truma. That will apostle her. The Bas Yisrael koyin he lo Michael kinyan kasbar machman of high labar kinyanhu. Since it's only time at the time of Erison that this would work on a suin is only when it's talking about a kinyan kasbo. Like for example, a Bas Yisrael marries a Kohen, but if the Kohen is a cheresh, then that's not considered to be a kinyan kasbo. It doesn't work midraisa. It's only through a din derabanan that it works. Uben tesha shana. And then if the child is 9 years old. Now, what exactly is this talking about? So, in the Havamina, we think with Shemeres Yavam, we're talking about a Shemeres Yavam who is a Bas Kayin, who's waiting to get Yibum done for her, and who is she Zakak to? Leben Tesha, B'Yom Echad, to a non-Kohen, to a Yisrael, who is 9 years old. So we're talking about a Bas Kohen, who is a Shomer Shavam to a non-Kohen. So in that situation, yeah, it makes sense. It's going to apostle. So Lamai, if it's going to be to apostle this Bas Kohen, so Katanami Missile apostle. So even if it was a Katan, she would also be apostle. It wouldn't make any difference. Says Rashi, B'Shomer Shavam Leben Tes V'Lo Oh well, I didn't have Tasha, so there will my hilchasa naka ben tes. Ila mifsol, if it's apostle, lashmina dikiva dechazi labia, apostle labazika snivamin. So the fact that there is a zika to this Yisrael, that's it. She's no longer allowed to eat truma. So my iri ben tes, I feel katanami deloy karinin bavashavel beisavia. Why does it mention the case of 9? She be even if he's less than 9. The fact that there's a zika, we no longer say that she can just simply return back to her father's house. And since this Bas Kohen can't go back to her father's house, we already know that she's going to be possibly eat truma, even if the boy that she's zakuk to is less than 9. So why does it mention 9? It's not. There's no chiddush when it comes to being missile possible if it's 9. So lachuli gadol lachule. If it's to regarding eating, gadol nami loy maichel. Even if we know for sure this person's not a child, he's an adult, she is still not allowed to eat because she's a Bas Kohen. So again, if we're talking about a Bas Kohen Yisrael, so if it's the apostle, the katan, so then there's nothing to talk about. If let's say it's in order for them to eat, so what do you mean? Even a gadol would not be able to eat. It says Rashi. The reason why I mentions 9, Vilashmin and Ravusa, the Chiddush is the Afagav the Chazilabia, even though he's fit for Bia, Lord Michael Yavimtai Bezikasai, that he's not allowed to eat. A field Gadol Mamash, even if let's say he's an adult, Loy Michael, the Lav Kinyanahu, the Hashmin and Begadol Beresh the Mastisan. So what exactly is this Chiddush in this situation? So the Gemara says, Amar Abaye Hacha B'Yavim Ben Tesha Shana Yom Echad. We're talking about a child who is actually 9 years old. Haba Al Yavim To Askinan, and he has relations he actually has Bia with his Yevamot. The Midaraisa Kanua, because Midaraisa it's a Kenyan, because it's a child who's 9 years old is a Bia. So Sakadan Hoyel Umidaraisa Kanule, since Midaraisa it's a good Kenyan. Ubiyasobia se'ema loichil. You would think that if he's a Kohen, then she should be able to eat. Once he's, again, even though he's 9, since it's a bia, it's a Kenyan, so she should be able to eat. Kamash 1, also bias ben teisha shana v'yom echad k'maimer begadol. A Kohen, as we know, does maimer, she doesn't eat truma. Just like a regular marriage, if kedushin was done midir because of ula, they won't eat truma. So the reason is a child who's ben tisha shana yom echad does not have the status when it comes to bia that it has the same bia as a gadol. So even though bia was done, and therefore you should think it's a mamash a kinyan, nonetheless we say that they're not able to eat, even though he's a kohen, because it's only like only maimer was done. Says Rashi, the il gadol havi achli. if let's say it was actually a full-fledged man, adult, then she could eat truma. Lashmin Ravus Navga, the Biyasa Bia, even though the Bia of a 9-year-old is still considered to be Bia, if he's 9 years old, it doesn't, even though that's the case, says Rashi, Loy Michael, Upoislin, the Katani Bamastisin, Upoislin, the Katani Bamastisin, Ashara, Koi, Auber, Yavam, Bolobia, Ve'erisin, Vecherish. Ben Tes lo nakat le el mishum be'ein machilin. The point is she just can't eat because it has the same din as mimer. So we're not reading the Mishnah that it's both pasul and in oichel, but when it comes to a child, because we wouldn't say the din of being pasul, except for the other ones. But over here, it's come to tell you that she still cannot eat because it has the din of mimer. If that's the case, that the whole thing is because of Eina Michael, that this woman cannot, even though she's married to a Kohen, the Katani Suffolk ben Tisha Shanim V'yom Echad. Suffolk She'enoi. So we said, oh, okay, a case where we're not sure if the child's 9. Now, Hashta Vade ben Teslo Moichel Suffolk Meboy. We already are establishing that even if the child is for sure 9 years old, which is a bia, she's not allowed to eat. So then the case of a suffix of our Mishnah says, when it comes to the suffix, maybe the child's 9, maybe the child's not 9. In that situation, it's we don't want them to eat, right? We say they cannot eat. The question is, what's the chiddush? Even if the child's already, for sure, you're telling me even though the child's definitely 9 years old, because his bia is likened to mimer, she can't eat it anyway. So that is no chiddush. Actually, what it's talking about, according to this answer, is that he's 9 years old, and therefore it's in connection to those who are psulin. Says Rashi, Kegoin mamzer v'nesin umishim poislin nakat lo machilin. So we're flipping it. It's not because of whether she can eat truma; it's the din of pasling her. And we're talking about a situation where, again, he's one of these people who cannot enter the Kahal Hashem. The pasli b'biyasan, that as soon as he's 9 years old, he can pasel her with bia. V'kedesanya, ben tesha shana b'yom echad. Once the child's 9 years old, ger mani moab mitzvah v'dayim ikusi nesin chol mamzer shebol kohenes leviav Yisrael is psulaha. So that's the chiddush. It's coming to say that it'll pasel. Muhammad Atani Seifa, if you look at the next Mishnah, it says, Im inu ruin lavav Yisrael, hari elu poislin. It says beferish. If the person is 9 years old and is not able to enter the Kahal Hashem, so pasel her. So Machlal Dereishul B'Psul Naskinan, because it sounds like it's talking about the same thing. If that's what the Seifa, the next Mishnah is talking about, it can't be this one the Mishnah here is talking about. The Reisha Psuli Kahal, Seifa Psuli Kahuna. This Mishnah is talking about someone who's puzzled to come to the Kahal Hashem. The Seifa is talking about someone who's puzzled to Kahuna. In both of those situations, the din is going to be, and like Rashi says, for example, chol. Now, the fact is, both of them will puzzle. And therefore, even though they're both talking about puzzling and not talking about a 9-year-old regarding eating truma, not allowing her to eat truma, it's rather talking about puzzling her. Even though it's the same thing as the upcoming Mishnah, it doesn't make any difference. They're talking about two different situations. Someone who's posel kahal, one's posel kahuna. Okay. Question 9. Uben tesha shana b'yom echad poislin v'machilin. Well, my hilchas ni tani lo maskana Rabba. So maskana Rabba, what does it come tell you? What inyan according to Rabba? El Omer Rava. So Rava says, "Beben teisha shana v'yom echad dehanach psuin katani." So what is this referring to? This is question 9. So it's l'inyan psule kahal de poislin bebiyasin beben teisha v'yom echad. It's just saying that once a child is 9 years old, it'll passel her with bia. Question TA 21. Tanan. Ha'ober v'yavav v'erisin v'cherish u'ben teisha shanim v'yom echad poisel u'machilin. But my Ari ben teisha shanim v'yom echad. Two answers. Either v'yavam sheinu Michael. It's saying that the Yavam is not allowed to eat. The Havile Kemaimer Begadol, because it's a 9-year-old, it's like the Bia of him is like Mimer. Oh, Psuli Kahal. Or it's talking about, as we saw in the Seva, Psuli Kahal. So this was TA 21, which is pretty much the same question as question 9, with the exception of the first answers also brought down. Okay. Weiter. So now the Gemara continues, as we continue with the 2 dots. It says as follows, Gufa, getting back to what we said before. Ben Tisha Shana Yom Echad. So you have a child that's 9 years old in a day, it's his birthday. Ger, but he's apostle. He's a Ger, a Moini, Umwavi, Mitzri, Vedoimi, Kusi, Nasin, Cholo, Mamzer. So all of them are Pasul Avaba Kahal Hashem. They're all pasul to come to Kahal Hashem. Shabal, Kohenes, Levim, Yisrael's pasulin. So the din is apostles. Rav Yosi Omer Kosha Zaro Pasul Paisel. Any time in which your children will become pasul, you're apostle. However, Kosha Enu Zara Pasul Enu Paisel. However, if it's not going to pasul your children, you're not pasul. It won't pasul her either. Okay, we'll have to see what is that going to be referring to. What the nafgamina, what they're arguing about. Shemigmul oimer koshat the naisabito, and this is a Gemara in Kedushin. Anytime you can marry the daughter, ata naisa almunasa, wear the widow. Chosheno ata naisabito, yata naisa almunasa. So we'll have to understand what is this machlokas. So minahanimili. So Omer Rav Yehuda, Omer Rab, Omer Kor the Pasuk says Bas Kohen kisel ish zar. Now when a Bas Kohen marries a non-Kohen, so then usually at that point she's pasul de truma. Kivan shinibla. Once Bia has taken place, Lissel Pasula Pasla. At that point, she is now going to be unfit in Pasal to be able to eat Truma. I Hamaboile. So again, that when it comes, this is the Raya. Now we're saying that once she is with a Pasal, so once Bia takes place, she becomes Pasal. So we see that this is what we said before. The fact that this guy is 9 years old, it's a Bia, and he's a apostle, he'll apostle her with Bia. I hamaboyle de kamarachmana bas koyin. When you have a bas koyin, the mitzvah was zar l'seichel. I thought it's just pashut shot to tell you that a kohen, a daughter of a kohen rather, who marries the Yisrael, once they're married, she can no longer eat truma while she's married. So is now what this is coming to tell you? This pasuk. It says ubas kohen kisel zar pashut. Then you have a bas kohen who marries a non-kohen can't eat truma. Now that simple concept is miv shava el bis avia kinereham milechem avia teichel nafka. That when they get divorced, or let's say he dies, and she has no children, and she's not pregnant, she can go back to her father's house. It says Rashi v'chol zor lo yochel kodesh. Okay, so Gemara says, that she can go back to her father's house to eat. So is it not obvious that before she is not allowed to eat? No, because Rachmana hai lulav. Lolav. So the question is, maybe you could actually learn it out from a different pasuk. It says Rashi, so again, we're back to our question as we continue to Samach Chesed Beis. Now, Hahuma Boile, that pasuk we actually need a legufe to teach us the din itself. It says Rashi Lazar Gomer, someone who's a non-kohen. Trey the chol zar ksive. Says Rashi, the chol zar lo yoichel kodesh. Anyone who's a non-kohen is not allowed to eat kodesh. Va'od, and furthermore, gabi bas kohen ksiv. When it comes to the daughter of a kohen, it says v'shava milechem avia toichel v'chol zar lo yoichel bo. And from here we learn a lav labas kohen. When it comes to a daughter of a kohen, that while she's married, she's not allowed to eat truma because she's married to a non-kohen. He says that we need this, as Rashi says, Hai de bas kohen kiseh. We need it for the following: lekuchin gemurin. When it comes to an actual acquisition, that when she goes back to her father's house, b'misa sabah, when her husband dies, she has no children, that she will not be able to eat the chazan shaik, to eat like her other brothers, so it's coming to tell you this other din. So again, she's only allowed to eat the truma when she goes back, but not the chaz of a shaik. The Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Chanina min zar b'chol zar nafka v'yakat mi bo l'gasani because she chazeres chazes l'shem v'chazeres l'chaz of shok. So again, that was the drasha. V'Rav Chisda no Amar Rabbeinu ba Rav Shila Mikra. What's the pasuk? D'chsev v'baskan ksel ish zar he b'trumas hakadoshim lo soichel b'mur min hakadoshim, which is referring to the chaz of a shaik, that she's never to eat it. So im kin lechtem kra he b'kadoshim lo soichel mai b'trumas hakadoshim shema mina tarti. So we derive from here two things, but in fact it's true. We're going to learn out the din also when it comes to here that she cannot eat the chaza v'shaik. Ashkechan kohenes. I can see this is all talking about a kohenes. It's possible to eat truma, etc. If it was a puzzle. Well, if Yisrael's menolan, can you Rav Abba Rav bas uvas hachanami bas uvas. So the fact is this extra vav, so we end up saying it's coming to include also someone's not a kohen. That if she's marries a apostle, that'll apostle her. It's not just a kohen, a bas kohen. Bas hachanami bas uvas. Come on, Rabbi Kiva the darsh vavin. He darshans vavs. Fine. No, v'fil teima rabbanan kuli uvas kara yiseru. According to them, he says the entire pasuk is extra, and therefore can be coming to tell you again that even when it comes to a Levi Yisrael, also when it comes to Leviah Yisraelis, they also can become puzzle with the bia of a puzzle. Ashchan l'truma. We find that they're now to eat truma. L'kahuna menolin, says Rashi Shlo Tinasi Oid L'kayin, we show a puzzle that once she had bia with a puzzle, that not only can she now eat truma, but she's also not allowed to marry another kayin. Ought to what? Laviv Yisrael is lo kahuna marbina lahu. You're telling me that when it comes to those women who's a Levin Yisraelis, it's not to kahuna that we're including to eat with truma, because it's talking about truma, but nice mechel truma ninhu. They can't eat truma anyway. So the whole chiddush obviously cannot just be talking about eating truma, because when it comes to Levim Yisraelis, they're never allowed to eat truma. So what is it saying something special about them? It's going to passel them from being able to marry a kohen. So alam alo. Why don't we say mishkachas la deka'achla b'shvil b'na? You can actually say maybe it's not true. Maybe it's not talking about passing. How could it be? How can you eat truma if you're a Levi Yisraelis? Maybe because when she was married to a kohen and she had a child who was a kohen, and therefore she could eat. No, b'shvil b'na kavachaymer. When it comes to your child that she can eat, it's a kavachaymer. Ma kohenas. When it comes madach to a daughter of a kohen, a bas kohen, the kedusha. That the reason why she can eat truma is because of herself or her relationship to her parents. So pasala, so this person who's a paisel and is asul avel b'kahal can pasal from eating truma. So Laviv Yisrael is the lo yachal el b'shil b'na lo kol shekain. So you can already learn out from here that she's pasal. V'hino senes kohenes the kaddish kufa pasala. When it comes to kohenes, that she herself is kaddish. So it'll passel. So had or kaddish guful passel. Then certainly we'll say that she's going to be passel to a kohen. El kahuna, kavachaymer megrusha. Actually, you can learn out from a kavachaymer from megrusha. My grusha, shumu teres, but truma. That when she gets divorced, she's allowed to eat truma. asur kahuna, but she's not allowed to marry a kohen because a grush is also no kohen. So zu, she asur b'truma. So this woman who had tashrish with this apostle is not allowed to eat truma. It didn't shipsul kahuna. The chimas here ben adin gil milsa bialmahu. The ema nivla l'psul l'chayvi krisos. Maybe it's coming to tell you that if you're boil apostle l'chayvi krisos. Maybe it's only when it comes to the person who's a chayvi krisos. Now kisiyah oimrachmana. It's talking about relationships in which there's kedushin. The kedushin is typhus, even though maybe a lav, but it's not talking about karis. If that's the case, if let's say an Oivik Chachavim or an Eved has tashmish with her, then that should not passel her because they're not fit to be married. No hanach pasli Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Yochanan. The reason why she would be puzzled by having relations with Oivik Chachavim and Eved is not totally on the fact that the kedushin was typhus, because it's not a kedushin, but rather it's the Rabbi Yochanan Mishum Rabbi Shmuel. When I know Oivik Chachavim Eved Shabal Bas Yisrael, V'al Kohenes Levia Shepasluha. Why? Shnemer Ubas Kohen Kisei Almana Gerusha. The pasuk says this as we continue to Samach Tesam Adalf. Mishesh Almanus V'Gershin Ba. Only someone that actually is shaykh to become a widow and divorced. There's shaykhs of marriage. Yotzu Oivin Kacham Ve'eved She'ein Lo Almonus V'Gerishin. That's the reason why she cannot eat truma. To Ashchan Kohenes, because again for Kohenes it's totally on eating truma. Laviv Yisrael Manolan. So Kanim Rav Abba Omer Rav Bas Ubas Achanami Bas Ubas. So Kaman Rabbi Kiva the Darsh Vave. He darshans the vavs. Now, feel it Rabbanan Kul Vas Kari Seru, who it's an extra positive. Ema Mishesh Lo Almanos V'Gerishin Ba. Someone who has shaykhs to marriage, Ki Leisle Zera Ka'achla. If they don't have a child, then she can eat. Ki Isle Zera, if she has a child, Lo Achla. Mishein Lo Almanos V'Gerishin Ba. Let's say, on the other hand, someone who doesn't have shaykhs to marriage at all, Afna the Isle Zera Nami Techel. Maybe we can say that even with a child they can still eat. Then you would not need this riboy. Says Rashi, the high crawl kulukse lashmina the zera de avichavim the eved lo puzzle riboy levi of Israel dechsebe lamuli. Okay, let's just see a couple more questions. We'll stop here. Question 10. Gemara. Bas kain kisel izar. He betrumas ukadashim lo seichel. Shma mina tarti. So he said, we derive two things from this, and Gemara asks a simple question. Elu tarti. What are the two things that we learned regarding apostle? So one is that a bas kain shenisas Yisrael, a bas kain who marries Yisrael, even though umeis, he dies, and she may be able to go and eat truma. However, below zera eno chazeres l'kadshim. She's not allowed to eat the chaz of a shaykh. Second, that nivel l'pasala. The pashut shot, as we said, is that if she has bia with someone who is pasal or not able to come to Kal Hashem, so that individual will pasal her. Okay, that was question 10. TB23 maybe. Baskan Chinisa Israel Mace V'achal Batruma Achar Misasum Nimsus Muberes Ha'im Olehel Shalom of Mafreya Karen B'Chaimish Shal Truma Adkan.